Hi, I'm Lori Hauptman. I'm here today with my husband, Yale, and we're going to talk to you about some common questions that our clients have about taxes. So,
what a fun topic.
I know. What do they say? What's a sure thing in life? Death and taxes, which is really both.
And we're going to talk about death taxes.
Death taxes. Okay, yes. So that was actually my first question. What are death taxes?
How did I know that was your first question? I cheated a little bit. Common and death taxes are, I think, are a term, or is a term, that was used by the Republicans when they pushed the phase out of the state taxes. They're more commonly known as estate taxes. And there are a number of different taxes. There are taxes on a federal level, and there are taxes on the state level.
So how does federal estate tax work?
Okay. Well, estate tax works based on the size of the estate. So for federal, right now, this year, 2010, there is no federal estate tax unless Congress decides, and they may, decide to change the law this year. But next year, 2011, the federal estate tax comes back at anything over $1 million. So for estates greater than $1 million, there may be, I say maybe, estate tax on those assets exceeding. So there may be instances where, in the case of a married couple, if there's a surviving spouse, however, then there is an unlimited ability to pass even more than $1 million. However, that $1 million exclusion or exemption would kick in, for example, when the second spouse dies and leaves the assets to the children. And by the way, the tax rate is going to be going back to 55% next year.
Which is a big chunk.
It's a huge chunk, yeah.
So what's the difference between an estate tax and an inheritance tax?
Okay. Well, let me explain. In New Jersey here, we have an estate tax also. And that kicks in on anything over $675,000. So the New Jersey tax kicks in on smaller estates, is owed on estates that are smaller than federal, or soon to be, I'm talking next year. However, that's the bad news. The good news is that the New Jersey tax rate is lower. It starts out at 4.6%, gradually increases to a maximum of 16%. Getting back to the question, though, that you asked, is that we also have in New Jersey an inheritance tax. Not every state has an inheritance tax. We here in New Jersey have both, estate and inheritance. And the inheritance tax works a little bit differently. First, it's based on the relationship of the heir to the person who died. And so we put those heirs into categories, into classes. So spouses, children, grandchildren, anybody in a linear line, up or down in relation to the person who died, plus a spouse, is not taxed for inheritance tax purposes. But then you start to get into other more distant relationships.
Cousins, aunt, uncles.
Sisters, brothers, siblings, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, different classes, different tax rates. And they range from anywhere from 11% to a maximum of 16%. And in New Jersey, you don't pay both taxes. You, in essence, pay the greater of the two.
Now, many people come to us, and one of the things that they always say to us is, well, if I don't have an estate approaching $1 million, do I even need to worry about federal estate tax?
Yeah, it's
although I don't think always people know even what they have, because...
Well, that's absolutely right, Lori. People forget, and they say, well, I have a house, but I have a mortgage, and maybe I have a couple of $100,000. Typically, we'll see that with a family, a young family with children. Say, I don't really have an estate. What do I have to worry about the estate tax? What they do forget, however, is about life insurance. And so if you have a $1 million, $2 million policy, that is includable in your estate for tax purposes, unless you employ a different strategy, which is utilizing a life insurance trust to move that property, or that policy, I should say, out of your name, which may or may not be necessary depending on the size of your estate. But life insurance is included.
Well, I think then it's pretty common that between life insurance, people's house, and even some basic assets, that a lot of people do go over the $1 million.
People go over the million, and here in New Jersey, people certainly, it's a lot easier to go over the $675,000. Yeah.
So now, what about if I just leave everything to my spouse, like say I decide I'm going to leave everything to you? Can I avoid estate tax altogether?
Well, as I said earlier, there is what's called the marital deduction, which says that regardless of what I've just said about estate taxes, you can pass unlimited amounts between spouses, and they're never taxed. So one might say, okay, well, what do I have to worry about this? And the answer is, it is a tax that's going to be owed typically by your children. So, for example, you and I are married. We have children.
Yes, we do.
We have very lovely children. We can each pass next year $1 million each. Now, if I die first and I leave everything to you, and then subsequently you die and leave everything to our children, you can pass $1 million. We've lost the ability to pass my $1 million because I left everything to you. So the type of trust that we talked about in our earlier segment on trust, which I would encourage people to go listen to and watch, talks about the credit shelter trust or the bypass trust. And what happens is that's the reason why we set up those types of trusts, to put my assets into the trust, into that trust. You'll have the benefit of it, but it doesn't become part of your estate. So when you pass away,
our kids are not burdened by taxes.
Our kids get $1 million because you could pass $1 million, and my $1 million that went into the trust can be passed tax-free that way. And that's how you maximize the estate tax savings.
So that's a little bit about taxes, and although it's not always such a great subject, we hope that you learned a little bit about it. If you have any further questions and you want to speak to either of us or someone from our firm, please call 973-994-2287 or visit our website at www.hauptmanlaw.com.